Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer, and welcome to Pro Cycling Manager 2021. This is a tutorial for the new fitness and objective system within the game. This is going to be covering both career mode and Pro Cyclist mode, as this new system has been incorporated into both of those, and I'll show you examples of the system within both of my Let's Play series that I have active on the channel right now. I have both a career mode and a stage race specialist Pro Cyclist mode series as well. Examples from both, and I'll let you know the details of how to maximize your rider's effectiveness throughout the season through the use of fitness and objectives. We start on the career mode side of things and an explanation of the system, and then we'll just show the differences in the Pro Cyclist side. Turns out the Pro Cyclist side is actually a little more detailed, a little easier to know what's up than it is in the career mode side, but we'll start with the career mode side so you can figure out what's going on here. There's two key screens that are going to help you with fitness and objectives. One is the objective screen, but let's start elsewhere, the other screen. And this is looking at individual riders within your team. When you open it, it always pops up on general. Let me show you. So if we go to our team leader here, Shitaro Aribe, if we open up his screen, it starts on the general part, but you have this preparation tab. This preparation tab is very, very useful this year in the way that the game is set up. Ultimately, the objectives and fitness system has been revamped in a way that A, simplifies it, and B, makes it more realistic. Here's the old system in a nutshell if you're not familiar with the older versions of the game. You could manage all of your riders, both in the Pro Cyclist mode and in the career mode. You manage their fitness week by week by week throughout the entire season. In terms of objectives, you would select three, one from each trimester of the season. And for those three, you can gain 3 bonuses for the objectives and 3 fitness peaks throughout the year. But outside of that window, you could maintain a near 100% fitness, or at least 90 plus, generally about 94 to 95 plus, all year long, every single week of the season throughout its entirety, and maintain 0 fatigue over that period. So high fitness, no fatigue, and then 3 objectives. That was the old system. It was too easy, and that's unrealistic because in real life, a rider, a professional cyclist, they're going to go through peaks and valleys when it comes to fitness peaks, and it's huge in how it impacts a rider's season. When you manage it well, riders can find a lot of success. A slight mistake can see their entire season derailed because, again, you cannot maintain peak fitness all the time. The body just can't handle it. So this new system, I want to first off acknowledge how wonderful it is to have a system. Now, was it nice to have your riders at near 100% all the time? Sure, of course it was nice. But having more realism brought to the game, even if it adds challenge and difficulty, very welcome change for me. And then likewise, the system has ultimately been simplified, speeds the game up. And I also welcome that. For me, this is actually a wonderful, wonderful change that Cyanide has brought to the game this year. All right, let's go ahead and start breaking down what it is. This is not a new screen, okay? You could find this screen before in older versions of the game, but you could find a very similar screen when you open the fitness panel where you used to handle during preparation, where you used to handle rider fitness. That screen in the planner, next to the riders, clickable, expand, adjust the training. That screen, it's not there in the way that it used to be there. It's still there. It's still present. We can look at Aribe here in the planner. This is that pull down management of the training program that I was talking about, but we don't control it. Now we just see what is his fitness and preparation level. What is his fatigue? 3 points. What does that all mean? And what do we control? Let's go back into the other screen. This screen has evolved from last year. So it's important to note that because in last year's model and previous year's model of the game, your y-axis starts at 50. It goes 50 to 100. Your varying fitness levels throughout the year, your training, your preparation, and you see your fatigue. That is unchanged. What's changed is the scale. It was 50 to 100. Now it's 0 to 100. Now, with that in mind, in years past, fatigue came down to a simple mark. Anything below 50, your rider was not fatigued. So you could have a tiredness of 49 points and you were not fatigued. At 50, you have light fatigue, and I believe it was 75 where you get to heavy fatigue. Heavy fatigue, you're going to see -4 race day conditions every day. At 50 plus, you're going to see probably -2s most days. So you simply avoid it by managing your training schedule, making it light when you need to make it light. But that system has changed as part of this. The new system, instead of at 50 points where you begin to see light fatigue, they've scaled that down. Now it happens at 40. You could say Uribe, for a short period of time early this season, February into early March, he did get light fatigue. Since then, we have managed it much better. It is going to ebb and flow. It is going to rise and fall. I'm not sure exactly what the mark is for heavy fatigue. From what I've seen, I believe it happens now at 60 and above, though I'm not certain on that. Let me know in the comments below so I can add a note if you've already found exactly where that value is yourself. The main point is you want to avoid fatigue all the time. It's very, very bad for your race day condition, and it's very bad for the expected results of your riders. So to avoid that, keep it below 40. The other number, 60, doesn't matter so much. Again, it's keep it below the mark, and mark is 40. Fitness, we want to be high all the time. However, that's just not possible in the new model. The new model guarantees that roller coaster, that ebb and flow, that rise and fall of fitness levels. Get used to it. You're going to have to plan around it now. Now, the primary reason why it's not possible is that you have objectives. And instead of a maximum of 3 in 1 year and spread out, it would have been nice if you could just pick 3, because there's 3 Grand Tours. And if you're a stage racer, 3 Grand Tours is a fantastic set of 3 objectives if you want to win all of them. Wasn't possible in the old system. You could get 2 of them, you couldn't get 3. The Giro and the Tour fell into the same window. Now, you can pick those 3 objectives. And you could pick a whole bunch more beyond that. There's advantages to picking those, and there are disadvantages. Now, the primary disadvantage is it's going to drastically increase your fatigue. So each objective is going to drive up your fatigue. So you need to choose carefully those objectives, how and when to use them. But here's the basic details going on behind the scenes on how to manage your fitness level. When you are not in a objective window, your fitness is capped at 80%. Anytime you do not have an objective or an upcoming objective, your fitness cannot go above 80%. At 80%, you're going to have a -1 race day condition with 0 fatigue expected. Now, the game has a draw system for race day condition. When you actually go in, there will be a random draw. You have a +5 to a -5 range, and it's bell curved. So whatever you're expected, -1 or a 0 or a +2, whatever, if you have an expected of +2, you will have probably a 40% likelihood that you will have a +2. Add 1 or subtract 1 from that, +3 or +1. You then now have lesser odds, not 40%, but maybe 20%, that you will have a +3 or a +1, right? Up 1 or down 1 from whatever that expected is. And then it's going to taper off like that. So bell curve style, +5 is possible, -5 is possible, but it is unlikely. The odds are against it, but it does happen from time to time. The expected race day condition is what you can control, because the bell curve, random draw. Anything that you can commit to make things better for your riders at the right times is going to help you out. That's why the old system was super easy to gain that advantage consistently. The new system, not the case. And so we've got to manage riders more carefully than before, even though the management system is easy. Again, when you're not approaching or in an objective, your cap is 80% on fitness, which the expected race day condition is -1. When you approach an objective, and I don't know exactly when the window opens for this, but I believe somewhere around 3 to 4 weeks out, as you approach an objective, that window opens and fitness begins to build, meaning you're no longer capped at 80, you are now capped at 90, and your rider will build fitness through training or racing towards that goal. But then again, stuck at 90 cannot go beyond. And then finally, when you hit inside of 2 weeks, specifically meaning 13 days before an objective, it fully opens from that 90 cap and now hits a 100 cap. Now that doesn't mean that you're going to be in those places with your fitness, but it means it becomes possible to hit those landmarks. Full fitness is only available inside of 2 weeks before an objective and during an objective. Now, the moment the objective is complete, you are then going to go through a mandatory rest and recovery period. For the next 10 days or so, your rider is going to be down and out. Their fitness is going to drop drastically, and they are guaranteed to suffer poor race day condition through that period. So again, timing is going to be very important. Now, there's a lot more going on besides this 80, 90, 100 cap on your fitness from a few weeks out to 13 days out to the objective itself. It looks like the first landmark is 5 weeks out. And here's why I say that. Uribe right now just went inside in the last 2 days, just went inside that window where he is 5 weeks out from his next objective. And he's had a while between his last objective. My team actually has 0 races in the entire month of August, and then only 1 objective left at the end of the season. And the game, by default, had my entire team selected. You can actually see it in the background here. The entire team selected for the Crow races in the Croatian race. And with no objectives at the end of the season, nothing necessary to worry about, I didn't bother changing it. So my whole team is pre-selected for that. But you can look at this right now. Uribe, his fitness peak, you can see it's locked at 90 points. Okay, that's using the old system in a new way. We have training, we have races. Those are the points that he's picked up. You can see right here, fitness, 84%. Training points, 0 points per day. Cannot push the gauge beyond 90. And this is what I was talking about. The gauge cannot go beyond 90. But there's 2 things that are really important to know here. Remember his fatigue? What was he at? 3%. 3% is all the fatigue that Uribe has. Well below the mark, right? I now know that the mark is at 40. He's 37% below that. The old mark was 50. He is extremely far below that. Unlike the old model, when you were looking at a rider's fitness, you have a yellow bar, and then you had empty space. If they had hit fatigue, as in 50 or above, you would get a sliver of red bar like we have here. Uribe has that sliver, but Uribe has 3 points of tiredness, 3 points of fatigue. That's it. 40 is way up here. He's nowhere near. There's 10. He's at 3 points. Okay, we already confirmed that. What he has is a limit. He has a cap on his fitness right now. His fitness is capped at 90. And if you look at the bar, red covers 10%. One thing that is throwing a lot of experienced PCM players off right now about the new system is you get this cap. You get this limitation on fitness, and you can see it either as a sliver like it is now or twice this size, which is that totally out of window, as in more than 5 weeks away from an objective where you're capped at 80. And so then 20% of your bar is red. And then now when we go inside this window 5 weeks down till 2 weeks where we're at 90, that cap is now at a sliver, but it's still there. This red bar can mean one of 2 things. It can mean the cap that's limiting your fitness gains approaching objectives, or 2, fatigue. And that's why you need this preparation screen now more than what we've ever needed before. You can't just see it through that training screen and manage it there and make sure it stays below 50 throughout the year. Because again, the old gauge, the old graph started at 50, and all you had to do was make sure that that red line stayed flat across the bottom. You needed a flatliner. Anything more than flatliner, if that thing started to pop up, then you give them the week off and make sure they don't train that week. And then that way you can just about maintain 95 plus fitness all year long and keep that bar below 50. Now we have to, 1, keep it below 40, and 2, we can't assume a chunk of red on our fitness bar means fatigue and therefore needs an adjustment to your training schedule. You're going to have to go in and see where they're actually at. But there's ways to see that, so it's okay. Now, the reason why Uribe is at 84% is that 2 days ago he was capped at 80. That has just unlocked. It looks like he's picking up 2 points per day, and so he's gained that. So in 3 days, he'll have picked up the other 6 points, and he'll be sitting at 90% fitness until he gets inside 2 weeks, and then that'll open to 100, and then 5 days will open him up, which means you're going to hit your fitness peaks early. You're going to hit them. You're going to hit that 100% fitness before the fitness peak actually kicks off. You're going to hit it in a different manner this time around. So that is one thing to keep an eye on. Now, this piece is hard to judge. My interpretation of the system so far. This is definitely open for conversation in the comments below. My interpretation of the system so far is that your fitness is not 100% tied into that fitness peak model, but it is closely tied together. It's going to take objectives to get that fitness to climb up. They're going to train on their own, and they're going to train on their own at those various levels. So if you're at 80, you could expect your fitness to be somewhere near that 80, but at times it's going to rise. Now, these are the objectives, these half circles and dotted circles. These are the objectives of Uribe's season. And if we use him as an example, GP Crunch that we just had, you can see how he got up to 96% for that fitness period. In between, you can see he was down at 80%. But then he had the national championships for Japan. He got to 95%. But then he was in between. Didn't drop quite as low, but that's because he went in between 2 objectives quite close together. 98% starts to drop. But you can see how it drops and then continues to drop. Drops and then continues to drop. We begin to prepare for an objective and it climbs back up. The thing to watch out for here is what happened when we had 3 objectives back to back to back. End of February, early March, mid-March. Those 3 combined over a roughly 3-week period. A couple things happened. We had build-up for 3 objectives that led to very low fatigue to massive fatigue. In fact, we got over that 40% mark and he got into having trouble with his fitness. We had fitness that started with earlier preparation and he had to go 90%, and then he was climbing and climbing and it lasted longer. He had higher fitness levels for a longer period of time. But then by his second objective, he was not training at all because he had fatigue. So if you get into a zone where you actually accumulate fatigue over 40, it appears that they're going to shut down. And instead of having high 90s and fitness peaks for these other 2 races, Uribe was in bad shape. His fitness was dropping. He wasn't training. He was beating off fatigue. It seems that the model is set up in such a way where if you get tired, they will rest. If they are not tired, they will train according to the objective model. And the objective model, if spread out, you can maintain fairly high fitness most of the year. If really spread out, you're going to see it drop a bit, but then it's going to climb back up. But what you're going to avoid is too much fatigue. You can see that preparing for Rhone Alps, it came back up as we had a second one close by, but we had a chance over a 1-week period to recover, take that rest, and he was in good shape. And it only saw his fitness drop by a marginal amount. So having objectives a little over a month apart, 5 weeks, 6 weeks apart, if you can maintain that throughout the year, you can maintain a rider at a relatively strong fitness level throughout the year and have quite a few fitness peaks over the course of a season. You'll get a lot of fitness peaks if you could do it once every 6 weeks or so. Back to back to back is dangerous and will lead to complications with your fitness level. That's the main takeaway here, is if you spread them out a little bit, at least a month, to 6 weeks apart. You're going to be in good shape, and you can hit one objective after another, after another, after another throughout the season. The last thing before we take a look at the Pro Cyclist comparison is how to plan the objectives, how to effectively plan. Now, the idea is to set them apart roughly 6 weeks, but you also want to play to the strengths of your riders. The system itself is simplified, but one thing that isn't simplified about it is how to pick them. Well, here's how to do that. You need to start with your calendar. You need to start with your sponsor page. Know what the major races are where you need your best riders to be at their best, especially if you're playing a more challenging game where sponsor evaluation matters. And then play to your riders' strengths. Prepare their objectives to the races that they might actually do well in. And if they're going to be a domestique for a race, or if they're just filling out their calendar to be there, just be a face in the peloton, let that be the times where they're resting and recovering and have poor race day condition. But have them ready for the races where you need them to be at their best. Here's how to figure that out. Okay, 1, look at those sponsor objectives. Know which races matter most. If you're a team that has ambition to win a Grand Tour, you better well have your stage racers on their fitness peaks objective for that major Grand Tour. You need to plan ahead of time. So looking back from June to July for my team's calendar, you need to know the races in order to know which riders need to have that as an objective. So we have the Oberösterreich Rundfahrt, 1 sprint stage, 2 punchy stages, and a prologue-ish / time trial. That's a little bit punchy. Would I want a sprinter to be at their best for that? Not necessarily, but my punchers, I absolutely want them to be at their best for that. Savoy Mont Blanc, climbing and punchiness. No sprinters necessary. I don't even need to send them to a race like that. After looking through your calendar, you can figure out. For us, GP Crunch was an important objective. We had a 3-star objective for that. And even though on paper it's punchy, you look at the profile and there's undulation. But it's relatively flat considering, and so if you could protect your sprinters and if they climb decently enough, you can get them to the end, which is what we did. We took 4th and 5th place on that one with sprinters. The punchers, the top punchers, swept the podium just ahead of us, and we were that close to a top 3. So there is ways to get inside and make things happen. But GP Crunch, none of my riders had that as an objective initially. I had to add that in there. And who did I add that in there for? Uribe. And if you know my career mode, Zervis, Raylanu, my best punchy and sprint guys. Add objectives when and where you need for the right races. The good thing about the new system, unlike the old system, is when you get here, you're only going to have races that are actually on your calendar to choose from. There's a lot of races in September, but we only have 2 choices, and you at least get a brief overview of what the profile is. Not that it's always terribly accurate. GP Crunch, punchy, but sprinters did just fine with that one. But this is the key. When you want to add objectives, when you want to manage your objective schedule, this is the best place to do it from. The Riders tab under Objectives, choose your rider, and then this is their list of objectives that already exist. If they haven't happened yet, you can X them out. You can cancel them out. We only have 1 left on the year, and then you can go in and add objectives this way. Select the one you need, select the month, select the race. You're going to get an overview of their whole calendar year. The break is the important one to note, and here is the best way to manage your objectives. Outside of getting the correct race for the correct rider, outside of getting the team leaders in a major race, those come first. But after that, to build out your calendar, the best thing is to manage peaks and valleys. And what we discovered is that you need to keep fatigue below 40 To do that, you should spread out your objectives roughly every 6 weeks. Then you want to maintain high fitness. So you want to keep them relatively close together. You want to have a fairly decent number of objectives throughout the season. And then we also know that you're capped at 80 when you're more than 5 weeks outside of an objective. So you don't want to be more than 5 weeks outside of an objective very often. And then you're capped at 90. So fitness is going to rise. Fitness is going to be better. And then inside 13 days before an objective, it opens up to 100, meaning your fitness can go high. You can get a +1 on your race day condition on a race that isn't the objective itself. So one thing you can do is start coupling races together. Now, if we look at Aribe here, we had 3 races in just over a week, and then we had a recovery, and then we had our next race. Now, if it wasn't for the fact that these 3 were back to back to back, which didn't pan out, if we had eliminated one, especially one down the middle, and had just the 2, he would have done just fine. He would have had the weeks in between, and he could have raced more over that period of time. You can benefit from, if Rhone Alps is your focus, at Tour de Jura, you end up with good race day condition. If you pick Tour de Jura and leave out Rhone Alps, well, then you're in your recovery week when you hit Rhone Alps, and therefore you're in sad shape and you don't want to be at that race, and then you only get the benefit of 1. So one thing you can do about coupling these together is you set the objective as the one at the end of a window of a few weeks of racing. You can hit that few weeks of racing, have high, strong fitness throughout that with the objective right at the end, and then have a little rest and recovery period when the team doesn't have races or that rider doesn't have races scheduled. One thing that can really help management of a team is if you have groups of riders. If you have a group of classics riders, or if you have a group of domestiques, or let's say you have enough riders of enough quality to have 2 groups of domestiques. This is probably one of the easiest places for this one to be served. 2 groups of domestiques are not going to have any primary objectives. They're not going to have any races that they're specialized for. They're not going to have any races that you need them at to serve as leader. They're going to go and support riders. If you can stagger 2 groups of domestiques, as one group is building and then having fitness peak and one group is recovering, if you go back and forth between them, staggered by every 3 to 4 weeks, well, then all of a sudden you'll have a group of domestiques, 4 or so, always readily available for any race, any environment, any time during the year to then go and assist leaders and be on a +3, +4. And while still not being good enough to compete, instead of getting dropped at kilometer 60, they're still around at kilometer 170 until you're getting into that final climb, giving your leader support for that much longer, being that much more effective as a domestique. Pro Cyclist mode now, and the same screen for preparation is here and evident. And you can see I've got a couple back-to-backs here that maybe I don't want to have. Maybe we're going to overdo that. Maybe I want to readjust that. And then we have a couple back-to-backs again here later. So I might want to cut back on that, as we've already seen. You can see here we had just 2 back-to-back objectives. And look what happened. We got the fatigue up over 40, and that was enough. And then you see the crash after. You could see how hard we fall to recover from that fatigue. And for the second one, we weren't in great shape at all. You really do want to try to spread these out, one objective every 5 to 6 weeks. In Pro Cyclist mode, under Rider and Training, you have the same objectives tab that we have in Career mode with all the same functionality that prepares your season. The only difference is that when we have an additional fitness tab where you can manually adjust your training schedule. You can manually adjust to take care of that fatigue. You can manually adjust to try to pick up that fitness and maintain higher fitness levels throughout the course of the season, while similarly trying to manage that fitness level, or the fatigue level. But ultimately, you're still locked within that same objective system. The key here, figuring out how to do that every 5 to 6 week variance. What I've seen so far in terms of your fitness level and what it does for you. Anything 82 and below is a -1. I've confirmed that 84 and above is 0 on race day condition. I don't know if 83 is one way or the other, as I have not had that entering a race just yet to see if that works. But for that expected race day condition, it looks like your target is about 84 and above. That way you don't have negatives. You don't want negatives. Negatives hurt. They make everything so much more difficult, especially when you take a big negative and you have weak stamina resistance already, and that seems to be more greatly affected than your other attributes. That's the only real difference between Pro Cyclist and the career mode, is how that impacts. But again, no tiredness. But when you are outside of that window, you are going to get that red bar regardless. That's that big key, because so many people have freaked out that they are fatigued when they're not actually fatigued. It's just that cap being set. So make sure you use the preparation tab to see. In the Pro Cyclist mode, we also have that same screen here, the training schedule under the fitness tab, which is not there in the career mode any longer. All right, folks, quick recap. Training schedule is now 0 to 100 instead of 50 to 100. Fatigue is now setting off at 40 instead of 50. The red bar on your fitness peak as you're entering races does not necessarily mean that your rider is fatigued, but can mean that they are capped away from an objective. You are capped at 80 when you're 5 weeks out, or out more than 5 weeks out from an objective. You're capped at 90 when you are more than 2 weeks out from an objective, and you only access the 100 and fitness peak when you approach an objective. Following any objective, you are guaranteed you are going to see a break. You're going to see a recovery period, in which case you want to time those carefully. For your leaders, time things around your big races. For most of your better riders, you want to time things on the right races for those riders, but roughly spread out by 5 to 6 weeks. And then for your domestiques, you might want to group them and stagger when those fitness peaks happen regularly on that 5 to 6 week basis, so they can be of use to their team leaders more often than not. But just like the old system, the most important detail of all is keep fatigue below 40 at all costs. That is the biggest key to having your riders in the best shape at the best times possible. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, comment. I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.